Okay, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is a beautiful day today. Welcome to the Black Beat Podcast Show. I'm your host, John Washington, CEO of Flossin Media, unapologetically black in my perspective on the issues that matter to my community and people like me and beyond. I'm your host, and today we got a real exciting show today. I got my co-host here with me, Fawn Averson, and also my executive editor, Michelle Darr Correra, senior editor of Flossin Media. Today we have a distinct honor of welcoming Dr. Shariff Abdullah to the show. Now, Dr. Jurisprudence, Shariff Abdullah is a renowned author, speaker, and consultant who is known for his work in the field of social transformation and global change. Doctor, welcome.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you. You know, there's so much, if we've been kicking it earlier in the conversation, man, this brother walked in the door and surprised me, and I am pleasantly surprised. He is the founder and director of Commonway Institute, an organization and platform for individuals and organizations committed to creating positive social change. Boy, welcome, man. I'm welcoming the social change. He is also an author of several books, which I have here in front of me, y'all. You might want to grab a copy of it from time to time, including Creating a World That Works for Us All and The Power of One. Man, oh man, his timing, it couldn't be even better, for some of the things, Shariff, that I got going on in my life. And so I'm really eager to hear a little bit more. So without ado, we are eager to honor and welcome this brother to the show today, Dr. Abdul. It's all yours. Welcome, man. So what's going on with you, man? I understand you hail from Jersey, which is a fascinating thing.
Hail from Jersey, meaning I'm as far away from it as I can get without getting wet. And
if you could run any further, if there was more rock on America, we would probably be that farthest reach. So now tell me a little bit about, man, all this. What really was the spark for you? What I see you've written several books, and I'm really fascinating to delve into just about every one of them because the topics are really inspiring. But what was the spark, man? I mean, what happened?
Well, you mentioned Camden. And if that doesn't spark you to do something, I don't know what will.
Yeah, well, I don't know if most people know about Camden in South Jersey, and it's probably quite a place. But tell us a little bit about it.
Camden, Time Magazine said that it was the worst city in America.
Wow.
And
I thought Patterson was.
No, we got you. We would go to Patterson for vacation.
Oh, got it. Well, I ran through Camden everywhere.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, we had a quarterback named Eddie McMichael.
You grew up in Hell, so this must be South of Hell.
Yeah, South Hell.
It sure was. It was a little smaller, but it was real hell.
Yeah, and I was raised in the worst parts of the worst city in America. And on welfare, broken home, in the projects, you name it. I was the poster child.
I got my brother sitting out there at the end of this table. Right here, man.
And so I'm living it from the inside.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was pretty smart as a kid, and I just realized that we were not supposed to be living this way. Okay, human beings don't need to live this way. We don't need to live on top of each other in rat and roach infested housing and not having enough to eat. So if you know anything about Camden, you know that Campbell's Soup was the factory in the town.
Right.
And when we would run out of money for food, and this is before food stamps, my mom would send us down to the Campbell Soup factory, and they'd give us a wagon full of the dented and mislabeled and unlabeled cans, as many as we could carry away.
Man, this brother's story is similar to me. Bernardi's Bakery was mine.
Yeah, right. And so I grew up hating soup because soup was what we had to eat when everything else ran out. And we couldn't even get down to the Campbell Soup factory back in the days when they had meat markets, my mom would go down to the Roxy meat market and buy chicken feet. You get a shopping bag full of chicken feet for 10 cents, and we'd eat chicken foot soup.
Man.
And the whole time, like I said, I'm not saying this from my own personal perspective. I'm saying human beings don't need to live like this. So if I were to write a book of that experience, the title would have been Creating a World That Works for All Black People, because all white people were fine.
Yeah,
I could see the TV. Right. You know, Ozzy and Harriet were having a ball. Okay, and so
the Lone Ranger was real.
That's right. And Tonto was happy.
Yeah, he was right.
You know, and so my question from that point was, how do we get this world to work for black people? So when I was 11 or 12, we formed an organization called the Black People's Unity Movement.
Wow.
And I led my first demonstration when I was 11 years old. And that's the point where I realized the power of people. Somebody put a bullhorn in my hand. And when I talked into the bullhorn, people 3 blocks away would come out like, what's going on out here?
Wow.
And I don't remember what I said, but when we got when the march got to them, they came out and joined the march.
Wow.
And so the challenge is, how do we channel that the right way? Because I was misinformed, because the world wasn't working for some white people. In fact, the world wasn't working for most white people. The world doesn't work for the people it purports to work for. The world doesn't work for the people who are forgotten by, mainstream media, et cetera. Yeah. And so we need to be looking at, how does this world work for us all?
You was having that kind of vision at 11 years old, man.
And not only us human beings, but all other beings too. We basically took slavery and shoved it over to the beings that can't talk back. The ones that we eat, we work to death, we ignore, we take their habitat. We can do anything we want to do to them and think that there's no consequence that comes back to us. That is the attitude that gave us slavery. That's the attitude that gave us oppression. That's the attitude that created American apartheid. And it's the attitude that keeps going on unless we change the attitude. We have to change our consciousness. And by consciousness, I mean not just what I'm thinking, but what I'm thinking and what's going on in my heart. And if you don't have a heart, then we need to do something about that.
So, Doctor, you started the Commonway Institute. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about what that's all about.
Well, when I was in Camden, I wound up going to the worst high school in America. When National Public Radio went looking for the worst high school in America, they went to my alma mater. Makes you proud,
I let you have that one. Because my high school was pretty good. I let you have the worst one.
Yeah. It was. Yeah, we had a high body count before it was fashionable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but I always, for some reason, I've always scored in the 99th percentile on my standardized tests. I've joked and said, I think I could take a standardized test in a language I don't even speak, a subject I've never studied, and I'd still pass it. And that 99% gets you to whatever college you want to get to. And I wound up going to Clark University up in Massachusetts, and then Boston University Law School, and came out, practiced law for a few years, and I realized that I'm living the life that everybody is dreaming. 2 Ivy League colleges.
Right.
I escaped, and I had the opportunity to turn my back on Camden, although I wound up practicing with legal services, because I always felt that I had a role in fixing the problem. It took me a while to realize that lawyers don't fix problems. Lawyers create problems. The existence of the problem means I am going to be employed forever, So, I guess in this also was my spiritual belief that the world can reflect all of the spiritual teachings that we've had in all of the different religious traditions that we've got. And other than people talking about it on Sunday or on Saturday or on Friday, the rest of the time we're on free fall and we do whatever we want to do. And I think it's time that we stop that. So the idea of Commonway Institute and the idea of Commonway as a philosophy is we are one. Now, everybody says that. I mean, you go. That's right. Yes, right. Yeah.
Mary J. Blige.
Yeah. Okay. If we're going to break out in song now, I got. Your church, your masjid, your synagogue, your kovil, your temple, all of them are saying the same thing. None of them are practicing it. Or they practice it on Saturday or on Sunday or Friday, and the rest of the time they're just doing whatever they want to do. So my work on a very practical level is, how do we create the change in our systems and structures to reflect our deepest spiritual yearnings? And how do we reflect the what's going on in our inside and reflect that in such a way that it actually comes out to the outside? We have a value in our society, and that value has permeated throughout the entire world, and the value is make more money.
Capitalism.
Now, capitalism, but I've been to communist countries, they're doing the same thing, okay? The problem is we've got holes in our hearts, and we try to fill it up with money. It doesn't work. Holes are still there. Oh, you didn't get enough money. So they just got to get more and more and more. And you realize that you're not happy. You're not happy. No. You don't even have a path to happiness. In fact, the money's making you miserable. And so the challenge is, how do we get the systems and structures in a society that can lead us to happiness and fulfillment, lead us to an economic system that causes all of us to grow? How do we get a consciousness that allows us to explore the furthest levels of our consciousness? And looking at the shape of the world right now, how do we do that quickly?
Yeah. I mean, but before we get to that space, I mean, it used to be the time when maybe a mentor or somebody would tell you to think about the moon. That would begin to spark your whole spiritual quest, right? What was it for you that sparked you to arrive to this place, other than just coming? I mean, obviously, there's an academic background. You're an intelligent man. I mean, what brought a consciousness and awareness to arrive you to this solution in your mind, too? Some of the things that you experienced. Did you experience a lot of these things to where something sparked you to go, there's a spiritual connection, or there's a spiritual journey here? Talk to me a little bit.
There's an incident that happened that was like this trigger for me. We were moving for the umpteenth time. Poor people move
a whole lot.
A whole lot. Okay. And the landlord was moving us to this house. I was about maybe 7 or 8 years old. Moved to this house, and there was a sign on the window, and the sign said "condemned." Now I could read, and there's
the house you was moving into.
The moving into, yes.
Not laughing, but that's an interesting one there.
So I walk up to the sign. There's a lot of fine print per the sheriff's department, and I'm reading this sign, and the landlord walks up and tears the sign off the building and looks at me and says, "Don't worry about it, kid." And that's all the repair he made to the house.
Wow.
And we moved in, and you know about the row houses, okay?
Yeah.
So the house that we were in had separated from the house next door, and so when it rained, the rain would come sheeting down the walls, okay, in the room that me and my brother had to sleep in, and I was sickly all the time anyway, and messing with my asthma, etc. My mom had to put up plastic curtains, etc. And that was like, okay, everybody says it's the richest country in the world. Why am I living like this? Okay, and it has to change. And I've been looking at change strategies from the time I was 8 years old.
Wow.
And realizing that all the change strategies we have will produce change too slowly, or not produce it at all, or produce it for a handful of people, and that handful is okay, and there's another billion about to go down the tubes. So we've got to have massive change. We've got to have massive shift in our consciousness. So for a person like Elon Musk or a person like Jeff Bezos, having more money than they could ever spend in 100 lifetimes, if they gave them 99 more lives, they still couldn't spend all the money they've got. Why do they have it? Well, they have it because that's the mechanism. You make more money, and eventually you're going to get happy, maybe on Mars.
Yeah.
And so our challenge is...
Yeah, that was Gil Scott-Heron.
Yeah.
While he's on the moon.
I don't think Elon Musk heard that one, right?
So what was the first book?
Shariff,
that you wrote?
So my first book was The Power of One: Authentic Leadership in Turbulent Times. And as a little tiny book, but pretty powerful. It stayed in continuous print for 33 years. The examples just got creaky. My publisher said, "We got to update this," and I've been in the process of updating it for the past 7 years now. So yeah.
So that was in the 80s, your first book?
You don't ask me about time.
Okay.
I'm everything happened 10 years ago.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
So, and then the second book is Creating a World That Works for All.
Michelle, read one of from that book real quick. That a statement out of that book.
Okay, yes, this is a quote from Albert Einstein under the part 1. A human being is part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of delusion of his consciousness. The delusion is a prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few people nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty.
Doctor, what made that significant for you?
Well, first of all, there's no question that Albert Einstein was a genius on a level that the world had never seen before and really hasn't seen since. And we look at his physics, we look at relativity, we look at all these things, but the man was also a philosopher, and he was deeply concerned about the human condition, and recognizing that that when I think that I'm separate from you, it is simply a delusion. It is simply a an issue that says because there is a body sitting in this seat and there's another body sitting in that seat, that we're separated from each other. And what I explore in Creating a World That Works for All is looking at the consciousness that believes that. And I call it the breaker consciousness. The breakers are the ones who they don't want to live on the earth. They want to live on top of the earth. As opposed to two other groups, the other group being the keepers, the indigenous people around the world who have known for tens of thousands of years of how to live with the earth, how not to mess up, foul their own bed, know how to revere Mother Nature,
right,
and learn how to revere their food, and learn how to revere each other.
right.
And now the third group, of course, being what I call the menders. And those are those of us who were raised as breakers. I was raised as a breaker. Like if you speak English, you were raised as a breaker. Okay, but I want to heal the break. I want to heal the break in such a way that we start the process of living together. The question I ask around the world, who doesn't want that? And there's some real interesting answers that come up to that. A lot of the leaders don't want that. They believe that they win by getting their group more so powerful that we overpower the other group. And we have to recognize that that's an old strategy for losing, for all of us losing. So we see that right now in this presidential election year.
I'm glad you brought that up, man.
Yeah.
'Cause I was about to ask you, the significance of what your perception
Yeah.
was about that.
No, we have two people who are committed to things staying exactly the same.
Yeah.
And they find these little tiny things for us to fight about. And they get us all upset about these little tiny things, as opposed to saying, where's the world going? How are we going to learn how to live with each other? We had a situation. I did a lot of work in Sri Lanka, working with an organization called Sarvodaya, and working with a man called A.T. Ariyaratne. He was referred to as the Gandhi of Sri Lanka. So I got to hang out with Gandhi, and when this is in the middle of the war, the ethnic, religious, cultural war between the government of Sri Lanka, which was largely Buddhists, Buddhists killing, bombing people, killing, etc.
I didn't know if you even got into
Yeah.
Sri Lanka. I mean, because
Those
so
very
many
popular.
times the attempt was to
Yeah.
get in,
Yeah.
and there was always warring going on.
And the Tamil Tigers on the other side.
Right. Vietnam and all of that
Yeah,
around
yeah.
that space, yeah.
And if you remember the tsunami that came in the Indian Ocean 2009,
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
No, it was
Watched them people came all the way in and watched
Yeah.
all them people out
Yeah.
there, yeah. That was wasn't that in Thailand though, wasn't it?
It was
Thailand?
all over that
whole
region.
area,
Yeah. So the government soldiers and the Tamil Tigers put their guns down and started rescuing people. And they kept rescuing people. And they developed this competition as to which side could feed more people, which side could rescue more people, which side could provide more shelter, etc. And they had to be ordered to go back to killing each other. And everybody benefited from it except the leaders didn't want that. The leaders wanted them to actually go and shoot and kill each other. So we can stop those things. We stopped the war in Sri Lanka from 2001 to 2008 or 9 or so. And we did it without firing a shot. I worked with Václav Havel in the Czech Republic, the architect of the Velvet Revolution, the man who brought down the Soviet Union without firing a single shot. And the way we do things like that is to understand the problem, which we don't. We're nowhere near our problems in our society. Understand the solution. The solutions are generally really, really simple. You know, this one's got too much money and that one's got too little. How do you work that out? You know, and then apply it, and apply the solutions to yourself first. If you think that you are immune or exempt from looking at the problem, then you're not. You know, all of us have to do this, and I have to do it first. I have to be willing to ask myself the tough questions and and make the tough solutions.
Well, you said you was an intelligent brother even from the start and from 11, right?
Yeah.
So when I hear some of those statements as you reveal them, to me, I ask myself, is this a linear approach? Or is when you have to ask yourself these questions, are we speaking purely about a intellectual change? What kind of transformation are we talking about?
Yeah. I have, so I've been to 45 different countries. I've been to 120, 130 different cultures. Each society has, multiple cultures in it. Yeah. And I've met people who have had nothing. Now, when I first started, when I lived in Camden, I would tell people I was poor. When I went to the rest of the world, I was like, oh, looks like I was middle class. I was, I had a roof over my head. I
had a partner that said if you got a pair of shoes, a couple of pair of underwear, and a change of pants, you were wealthy. When it come to the world change, right?
I remember once sitting down in Sri Lanka, literally in a mud hut, and eating with this family. I didn't want to eat with them because I knew I was eating their only food, but I was the honored guest. I would be insulting them if I didn't eat some of their rice. And realizing that the farmers, the poor rice farmers around the world, if their rice harvest doesn't come through, they've got to sell a kidney. Okay, you can only do that once. And it ruins your life like forever. And it's either that or your whole family goes down the tubes. It's not a way that human beings should be living. We need a different economic system.
So I'm still trying to get Doc at this transformation. I hear the transformation. I hear you speaking about the transformation. But is the transformation a linear transformation that has to occur first? What are you speaking about in the esoteric aspect of this, or is it just a thought and an idea?
Well, I thought it was really important for me to have the thought and then test it. It's like, so when I went to Sri Lanka, my question was, can we stop a shooting active war with the ideas that are in these books? Answer is yes. Okay. Now, it's interesting that the news media doesn't cover it. They're not interested in the war is that we can stop a war. They want to figure out how we can sell more tickets to the war. Okay. So when I was talking with Dr. Aryaratne, and when I was working with his organization to move them on this path of ending the war, I said, if you do this plan, I said, the war has been going on for 30 years. I said, this war will end in 2 to 5 years. And most of the organization said, you're dreaming, this is, this is purely theoretical. This is pie in the sky, etc. War ended in 18 months. It ended earlier than I thought. Okay, when Václav Havel was facing the Soviet Union, and the Soviets put him in prison for 5 years. Well, they dusted him off, put a suit on him, and made him the president of Czechoslovakia. Okay, now that's what happens once you get in gear. But we have been focused away from being in gear, and so when you ask, is it a theoretical change? Yes, right. Theory's right in that book. Right. Is it a practical change? Yeah, the practical is that right in that book. Right. Is it a change in how you perceive the world? Yeah, that's right in that book. Okay, so what I want to do now is apply some of these things.
But you've spoken nothing about the spiritual aspect of the human development. Is that transformation come as the beginning of transition, starting with thought to emotionality to rationality, spirituality? What am I hearing you say?
Okay, I think that everything is spiritual. That I don't think there's any separation between the spiritual here and political here. I don't think there's any separation of spiritual here and economic here. I don't think there's any separation there's spiritual here and there's cultural here. If the separation is there, then you need to cure your culture, cure your politics, cure your economics. Gotcha. And we know in the deepest parts of our hearts, we know the right thing to do. And we know that there are folks out here in the world that are trying to keep us from that, keep us from thinking about that. Gotcha. And we need to not buy that separation, not buy the
divide and conquer.
Right, the game. It's a game. We can stop playing the game whenever we want to. Let me share a thought with you. I happen to know and meet, and actually like, a lot of people I meet I don't like, but yeah, I like this guy, James Rouse. James Rouse is the real estate developer. He created the idea of the mall. He actually made Lloyd Center. And I was talking with him and his wife, and he said, Shariff, I'm worth $8 billion. And I think that's enough. And he said, but I love the work that I do, and I can't help but make money. He says, everything I touch makes money. So he says, I'm taking the Rouse Corporation, and I'm giving it to a nonprofit. And he created the Enterprise Foundation. And he said, Enterprise is just going to build low income and affordable income for people, and they're going to use this money that I amassed so that somebody can use it, because he said, I can't use it, but I also I like working every day. Now, interesting thing was, U.S. law wouldn't allow him to do that. He had to incorporate it up in Canada. And so the challenge is, we know the right things to do, and we have a system that's set up to do the wrong things. We know we're putting bad chemicals in our food. The chemicals are making us sick. Yes. And we have a government that's paid for by the people who want to put the chemicals in the food. Yes. The people who should be protecting us are the ones that are harming us. Yes. It's time for us to do things differently.
I don't know how we became a system of by the government for the government. When did that shift happen?
Or by the corporations for the corporations.
Yes, because we really need to challenge those mantras, because we were built on by the people for the people, but almost anybody running for political candidacy this year, or just even the 99% that are trying to activate around policies, it's a jungle gym.
Well, the first thing you do with that 99% is divide them right down the middle and have them fight each other. Mm-hmm. Okay, I've done work in prisons in this country, actually in a couple other countries too, But a prison is a microcosm of society, and the way you control the prison is to get the various groups to fight each other. Now, they actually have a lot of common interests. So you make sure the things that they're talking about in this country is always about race. You know, the white prisoners against the black prisoners. It's like, why don't we just cut that out for about 5 seconds and start recognizing that we see something in common? I did some work some years ago. It seems like everything was just 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And
Busy 10 years.
this was in a small town in the Pacific Northwest that I still can't tell you the name of.
Coos Bay. No, I'm just kidding.
There's a
Okay.
lot of small towns and a lot of
Independence.
guesses.
Yeah.
Right. So they had a serious problem. Their public works department was all white, which is really easy to do in a small town in Oregon.
Yeah.
And they had an Hispanic worker come on board, and they started, and this is very important, they started treating him the way they treat each other. They treat each other poorly. So you start treating, they call each other names. They just started calling him names. And he started calling names back. So they said, hey, we got a buddy here. You know, so for this year that this guy was a temporary worker, for the year he's putting up with, wetback and greaser and all this other stuff, and he's calling them cracker and hunky, and they're all going out and drinking together, So he, his year's up. He is not given a permanent job. He and his lawyer, he walks to his lawyer's office, they walk over to City Hall, and basically back up a truck and clean it out with a year's worth of racist language, okay? Now, they hire me to, well, first of all, they're just going to fire the dozen people who did all the name calling, and they hired me and to help the other ones, the ones that were still there. I said, okay, I want to help them, but you give me they call them the dirty dozen. Give me the dirty dozen. Let's see what I can do with them. If I don't do anything, then go ahead and fire them. So he gave them to me for 4 hours, and in 4 hours, 11 of the 12 did a 180-degree turn. They said, we know what we did. We now can see that what we did was wrong. Shariff gave us a whole new set of behaviors that we can follow, and we're committing to follow them. I check in every so often, every 6 months, every year or so. I said, are they still behaving themselves? And the mayor and the city manager and the public works director said, I don't know what you put in their water, but they're now model workers. Now, I didn't talk about politics. I didn't talk about, racial oppression or anything like that. I talked about who they are. I talked about what's in their hearts. I talked about how did they perceive themselves in the world. Now, I can look at all of the fighting and all of the name calling and all this other stuff. I can see it. I can see that inside of all of it, is a condition of the heart. And once you get to that and through that, everything else it's smooth sailing the rest of the way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's some fascinating work, Doctor. I got one question as we draw to a conclusion, and there's probably a couple of them. I know that Fawn and Michelle are sitting eager. I think they have a thought, but there's one that just keeps resonating with me about your book, and that is, can you elaborate on the concept of the beloved community in your book?
Indeed. We have a couple more hours, right? Okay.
Yeah. With that. Well, we can come back.
Right.
We can pause and come back.
Yeah. No. The idea of the beloved community, the idea of that, and I guess I should say, I've read every holy book I can get my hands on. Okay, I've read the Bible several times through several versions. I have to. Nobody else is watching this, right?
No.
I skip the begats. Okay, I mean, you do that once, and
Yeah.
But I've read the Dhammapada, the Buddha. Right. I've read the
book on living and dying.
Right. The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. If it's in writing, I read it. And they all say versions of the same thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That we can create, and in Christianity, the concept is the divine community, the beloved community. In Buddhism, the notion of the Dharma, that you're living the way that human beings were meant to live. And it ain't this, I mean, it's as profoundly as I can say that this is not the way that human beings are supposed to live. Now, the reason that Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech is so powerful is that he was showing us that human beings in this society can live a different way, but not with the politicians who think that they get their power through the existence of conflict. So why don't we create a society that doesn't thrive on conflict? Why don't we why don't we get, and this is what my last book is about, Birthing the Nation of Gaia, why don't we get to a society that we all own? Everybody owns everything. And we're all listening to our hearts. We don't need folks in the White House or folks in the Politburo or folks in Parliament or anything like that. We can listen to ourselves. Why don't we uplift ourselves to the point that we don't need to be doing that? Why don't we stop fighting and start recognizing that we've already won? Now what do we want to do? Again, how do we resolve this thing? Okay, I've been arguing in favor of that. Back to my 11 white guys in the small town that's still unnamed. I didn't want them to believe a particular way. I didn't want him to see a particular thing. I didn't want them to. I wasn't trying to push a particular point of view. I just wanted them to stand up and be real human beings, and by doing that, they're going to do the right thing. They're going to do the right thing.
Wow. What is it? Do you get? And you guys, now that you guys close out,
we got about 5 minutes.
Yeah. What kind of response do you get when the public hears you speak on these topics? What are some of the responses you get from the public? Do you get an adverse response sometimes on these kinds of conditions? When you speak about this truth? I've
gotten all kinds of responses. Lots of folks first of all, this is brand new. I don't know how to react to this, Although it's not brand new, we've been talking about this for decades. We've been talking about this for centuries. We've been talking about this for thousands of years. But we need to talk about it differently. And that's, I think, one of the values that I have is that I've gotten the college training.
Yeah.
Okay. But I've taught at the graduate level, but I also know what's happening at the street level.
Yeah.
And it's time to bring them together. I've had people, just tell me to my face, I don't believe it. I don't believe what you're talking about. I don't want it. I don't want a world that works for all. I want a world that works for me.
Magic right there, huh?
Ta-da.
Yeah.
And what I say is, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye. I used to spend time trying to convince them that this is the right thing. It's like, no, you do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
See you later.
Yeah.
One of them was a minister. This is when the Iraq War started the first time, and I said I could solve the problem without shooting. I said it would take 3 years or so, 3 to 5 years to do that. I'd need either a big organization or some money, like maybe $20-30 million, but we could resolve all of the conflict. He said, "Oh no, we don't have the time to waste 3 to 5 years. We just go in there and bomb everybody." Now he's got the collar on. He's got this big crucifix around his neck, and I pointed to his crucifix. I said, "Well, your boss says that you have to love your enemies." And he said, yeah, I believe in Jesus, but I don't emulate him. It's like, well, take the cross off and just do whatever the hell you feel like doing, And but this is what he hides behind.
Yeah.
And if I recognize that our wisdom teachers were actually teaching wisdom, then I have to do it.
Wow.
I don't love my enemies because I'm some kind of masochist who loves their enemies. I do it because I'm told to do it.
Yeah.
And if I don't do that, I'm not living the way that I should be living on the planet.
Wow. Fawn, you guys have such a perplexed look. Do you guys want to take that? You guys are in awe, What you thinking, Michelle?
Definitely. Well, I've been in awe for many years, so again, thank you so much. I just want to know at this moment in history, with the enormity of what's facing us and where we're at, do you think it's still possible?
We are the caterpillar that's turning into a butterfly. We're in the chrysalis. We're watching everything dissolving in real time. Yeah. This is just amazing. I'm watching what's happening in Washington, D.C.
Hello.
We're seeing
another hour.
Right. Yeah, we're watching the Supreme Court dissolving.
Oh, my.
We're watching the White House. It doesn't even matter who's sitting in the seat anymore. We're watching it dissolving. In the chrysalis, the caterpillar is trying to hold things together.
Yeah.
Not recognizing that the next step is beautiful.
Yeah.
So we need to be embracing the next step. And what does that next step look like? And that's what I've been trying to identify in birthing the nation of Gaia. I believe that we are at the beginning of creating the world's first global human society. A human society that can span the entire planet. A human society that can operate from some very simple principles. A human society that can live without war, without conflict, without violence of any kind. And I think we can do it all relatively quickly.
But does destruction have to come first?
No, it's happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
I say, while this is dissolving, there's another thing over here growing.
Exactly.
It might be the
even
human
in the worst
consciousness.
Yeah.
even in the
Could
worst
be, or
situations.
it could be something like Tupac
Well,
was talking about. Mama was
well,
a rose
I
that
think
grew through
that-
concrete.
Yeah.
You know, and I think you alluded to that in this book about
Yeah.
technology being almost the enemy, but you know, the inner self, you know, the exploration of the inner self, and maybe some people are calling it the neuroscience, the
Yeah.
vibration, you know, that we are all energy and matter,
Yeah.
and really being in touch with that, and knowing that that is maybe where our power lives,
Yep.
and how that is able to shift anything.
Yep.
I'm assuming that's one of the techniques that you're talking to.
Yep. I
because-
keep going. I'm just getting there nodding. Yep. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard to watch many of us, regardless of whose side we are on and what war, when we're seeing the human casualties of it. You know, when we're seeing mothers and fathers and children, and even your story in such poor conditions that we allow. And it's hard to see, like, okay, so if I just shift my energy or my consciousness, is that enough? And I'm almost hearing you say, if we all do that, it is enough.
It's enough. And it seems as though I've been called naive a lot. And then people see the results, So I've, the mayor and city manager and the public works director was saying, from their point of view, we'll waste 4 hours with Shariff's time. These are hard-boiled. They didn't think they did anything wrong. They didn't want us to settle at all. So then, and I could have done it in 3 hours. And they were like, what did you do? Yeah. Even when you do it, they can't see that you did it.
Yeah.
So Erich Honecker, the former head of East Germany, the communist head of East Germany, was asked by the news media how long did he think the Berlin Wall was going to last. And he said very confidently, the Berlin Wall will last another 100 years. At that time, the Berlin Wall didn't even last another 100 hours.
Wow.
Okay. He didn't see it. The CIA didn't see it. There was no preparation for it. The world is changing, and it's changing really, really quickly, and we all get to either benefit from the change, or we get to go down with the Titanic.
Yeah.
Whichever we do is going to be our choice. It's not going to be, somebody else's choice.
Oh boy, this has been one exciting ride, y'all. We want to ride some more, but unfortunately, we've come to the end of this series. Yep. But listen, Shariff Abdullah, Jurisprudence. Hey, y'all rush out and get one of his books, man. I'm going to tell you, the brother's on to something.
Get all of them.
Yeah, get them all. There's a few of them out there, y'all. So there should be no excuse for y'all to get them. But this was an exciting episode of Flossin' Podcast, Black Beat, and boy, I'll tell you, this brother's got his hands on something. But, from the fire to the enlightenment, I mean, this is what it's all about, y'all. So I hope that this was entertaining for y'all as it was for me. And but I'd like to have his brother back on at some further time here. So anyway, we appreciate you. Thank you.
I appreciate you having me here, and
Thank you so much.
be glad to come back.
Bruh, it would be
wonderful.
respect. We out, right?
Yeah.